Afternoon. Let's start with the karakia. Tuia ki ranga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waro, tuia toto te tangata, kia te kaupapa o te hui ne, kia te kaupapa o te rangi ne, Māori ore ki tātou katoa. Welcome, and welcome to those on Zoom. Just a reminder for those that are on Zoom, the meeting is being recorded and will be available on the Council's YouTube channel. Microphones, please keep them muted unless speaking, and hands up questions. Zoom attendees are turned off camera and microphone during breaks. For those in session, the location of the toilets and the exits are out these double doors here to the left. The media may be present and may be filming part or all of this meeting. And though any hearing assistant hardware is available in the public seating area. Apologies, I have Councillor Walker, and Mr. Chairman is online, so is here and present, but is presenting his apology for not being here in person through illness. No other apologies that I'm aware of. So if we have a mover and a seconder, thank you, and a seconder. Oh, tie. Councillor Butler. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Carried. Moving into our public forum, Mr. Schaffner. Did I pronounce that correctly? Schaffner?
Good afternoon. Can I start or? Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me again. I want to talk about a few points in your quarterly risk report that's on the agenda today. And there's in particular this page about risk to priority mapping. There's one line that's a bit, not really a bit, really concerning to me. And it's about community support. There we can read something like loss of support affects willingness to fund council activities. Community resistance may delay or block projects. Community pushback can stall change. It seems to me there's completely different understanding what local government actually is within the council and from the community. My understanding comes from the Local Government Act, and I thought local government is people have suggestions, ideas, what they want to see in terms of infrastructure, service delivery, and then the council has the job to implement these, and not the other way around like it is. It sounds to me like the council has a plan and it wants to follow this plan, and any pushback or different views are not welcomed. So that's really concerning that there's this complete different understanding what the purpose of local government actually is, and that it is attributed as a risk if there is different views in the community or pushback to certain decisions that the council makes. And of course, if the council makes decisions that are not wanted by the community, then there's no money left on the table for actually doing the things that the community wants. And that's maybe why we are in this severe financial position right now. And I think this should change. Then there's another page in your report. It's a really interesting point. It's also under a risk, and I completely don't understand why this is a risk. It's heightened public scrutiny. Increased community engagement may be accompanied by vocal opposition or politicization of council decision. To me, that's democracy. That's the very definition of democracy, opposition and debate. And I cannot understand why this is a risk to the council. This should be embraced. And this follows exactly the same line what the chairman sent me in the email after the last meeting, that he said, yeah, the help from the public is noted, but from his perspective, not required. I mean, the perfect counterexample to this is what Ms. Ray stated in a public news article about the Motorweg aerodrome, where there were unconsented operations on the aerodrome, and Ms. Ray said, we haven't necessarily had our eyes all over the right things at time. This is just disappointing that we didn't pick it up ourselves. The public picked it up, that there were unconsented operations on the aerodrome. That's why I think it is required that the public has a voice and can bring issues forward. And it's concerning that I get these emails over and over from the council again, that it's just no willingness to engage in any meaningful way. Well, what's also this is probably I just don't understand this. I just don't understand this point. Why there's so much resistance to engage with the public on issues? Then we can solve them together. I simply don't understand. And another point from the email that I received from Mr. Chairman, and I won't repeat myself from the last meeting, but it goes in directly the same direction. It's about this warrant for the enforcement officer. I constantly hear they are valid, they are valid, they are valid, but why? Can we not engage in a meaningful debate about this? I don't understand this, and I don't want to repeat this topic again. I just want to give you a piece of paper, if you like. Yeah. And then I won't talk about this issue anymore. If anyone can show me the signature of the mayor on these warrants, then I will never talk about this issue again. But I haven't found this. Okay, that's now on your table. And the last point that I like to make, that then is probably my time is up, my 5 minutes. It's also what Mr. Chairman wrote in his report about fraud. It's like, yeah, there's no instances of fraud aware to any council staff. Yeah, that's fine that you constantly repeat this, but I have documents that prove the opposite, right? Why not come together at a table? You have your opinion. I bring my whole stack of papers with me, and then we can have a debate. But that's not possible. That's simply not possible. And I don't understand why. And then I heard from Mr. Chairman that he's not willing to receive my emails anymore. So I cannot put this forward in any meaningful way. And you continue to say, yeah, there's no instance of fraud. But I have these documents that were released by council staff on my table at home. And I just want to bring them to your attention. And that's not possible because I'm blocked on all levels. From staff, Mr. Chairman is not willing to see my emails, just redirected to staff. Yeah, we know what's happening to them. Thank you. I was a bit over my time. Sorry for that.
That's okay.
If there's any question, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? No? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. All right, moving on to declarations of interest. Do we have any additional declarations of interest in relation to the agenda items for today? No late items, which then takes us to confirmation of the minutes. So we have the public and the public excluded minutes for the 20th of March. So can I please have a mover and a seconder that they are a true and accurate record? Thank you, Councillor Butler. Thank you, McPhee. Can I do those collectively or separately? Oh, separately. So that was for the open, for the public, and for the public excluded, a true and accurate record. And
Yeah.
I got.
You got a move on a second, but you have.
All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Carried. Public excluded. Can I please have a mover that they are true? Thank you very much. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Butler. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Carried. Rightio, let's move on to our reports. Risk and assurance. Amy.
Thank you. So the risk and assurance report's in two parts. The first part is the risk report, which is attached. I do apologise, the formatting is not ideal and I'll work on improving that for next time, some of it's a bit small. So the key things from the risk report are that the financial strategic risk remains high, and that is because close oversight is still required of the financials, and any increases in cost pressures might lead us to need to take action to remain within budget. But we do have some mitigations or actions that are underway in that space, which include the development of a financial roadmap and a focus on improved reporting, financial reporting and forecasting. And there's also, in addition to that, some budget holder financial training as well. Within the report, I've also included a risk to priorities mapping, and the purpose of that is to demonstrate the importance of the risk management to enable our strategic priorities and organisational priorities. So as an example of that, I'll just touch on the health and safety risk. So health and safety, the importance of managing the risk is noted because, for example, if you go across the table, if we had incidents which created costs or changed our insurance premiums that would affect financial sustainability, we might have, for example, staff shortage. Oh, so I'm looking at the wrong one, apologies. So health and safety risks on sites, delay construction, so that would affect our infrastructure. Things like safety incidents eroding public trust, so valuing our staff, it's important to consider their physical and psychological safety. So it's just sort of a way of making sure that as we manage risks, we look at how they're impacting on our strategic priorities. It's not all the risks, it's a highlight of what we have, and it's part of a piece of work to make sure that our risks align with our priorities. The other thing I've got in here is some of the assurance work, and that's the internal audit plan is under development, and I'm currently working on socialising that with our internal stakeholders to make sure that we're happy before I bring that to audit and risk. There are a number of reviews and audits underway. We haven't received reports on those, so in particular the NZTA report and the flood protection review from OAG. We're still waiting to receive those reports. And we have a few recommendations which are on the previous reports which are progressing, but there are a few key activities that need to happen before we can progress those further. Thank you.
Questions, comments? It's just hand, isn't it? Councillor Butler.
Thank you for the report. I think last time I mentioned the issue of climate change as being actually visible as a risk. And I just wondered if you had considered including that in our list of risks. It does actually cut across, all aspects of council. So I'd like to sort of be able to, if it's not going to be in there, to feel comfortable that we have, a reason why. I know that under disaster event, you do include human-induced disaster events such as sea level rise, but that I don't feel that encompasses the risk that we have of, climate, sea level rise and storm-induced flooding and that type of thing. We've got situations where, for example, Mapu is a really good example where a seawall is now, which was erected a long way inland and is now actually against the coast, the seawall. So there are changes happening, and I think that, we need to just be on the front foot, and I feel when it's not included in our risk commentary or visible in our risk commentary, then it's harder for us to be on the front foot.
Through the chair, next week I'm catching up with Rob Smith, who's the owner of this risk. And so as part of that, we can discuss the wording and the language and whether the climate change should be pulled out of that and what those mitigations are. So I can flesh that out for you in the next few months.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks through the chair. Yes, Amy, thank you for your report. I'm always just interested in being reminded how our risk system is embedded within the organisation. So I'm just wondering if you can just remind me how you engage with the executive leadership team and then the other teams within the TDC. How does that process work?
Sure. So at the moment, I have a meeting with each SLG member and some of Rob's direct reports who aren't SLG members every quarter to have a discussion about their risks and a few other assurance-related activities. I also meet with each ELT member, and I also go to ELT once a quarter as well to present and talk about risks. At the moment, how it works is we have a conversation, and if they have risks in the register or we need to add risks to the register, I add them to our Excel spreadsheets. Moving forward, I would like to automate some of that. We're looking at creating a SharePoint register to do some of it, but there's a lot of value in me having those conversations with people on a regular basis. So I wouldn't like to move too far away from that. Yeah.
And if you were to rank it on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of how those engagements go, and because we are moving along this maturity spectrum in terms of our understanding of the risk system. So where do you think we are thinking about the quality of those conversations?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think definitely risk language is being used more. There are some teams or some managers who are very on top of risks, and there are some who aren't as on top of it, but we're working towards that. There's definitely more conversations around building some of our project risks. I've given them some advice on that. I'm starting to work with the LTP program of improvements to make sure that risk is captured in those processes. You want 1 to 5 score? I think 3. The maturing, yeah, maturing, yeah.
Cool. No, thank you for that. I mean, I think you are, certainly doing some great work to move along that spectrum. Thank you.
Frank.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So, for you, Madam Chair, just a few questions, if I may, Amy. Thank you for the report. Firstly, in relation at 5.1 around the upcoming and in progress audit and reviews. Firstly, the first one there, I think the CEO, the Mayor and myself met with this team earlier in the year. The report was due in April, not yet received, and now we're actually looking at an offer of further assistance with flood protection. It would be good to have this report prior to discussing that enhanced protection, just to see where we are at. So any reason for such a delay?
I understand that they've had some staff changes at OAG, and that has resulted in the report not being ready to but we haven't received a draft report. They have been in contact, and David has been talking to them, but yeah, it's not ready yet.
Thank you. And the same with the next one, NZTA technical audit. And that was more recent, but still not received.
Yeah, I have heard from Jamie that it's not been received, but I actually haven't got a reason behind that. However, I can get back to you if you'd like a reason.
Right. And then just in relation, I think you talked about this a little with Councillor, just in relation to our financial risk, the report shows it as relatively high risk. How does, if I just stop down the road and pay a person who was an accountant, interestingly, and just asked, how's the council financially going? Do you say, well, we're at a high risk? Or how would you explain that to a lay person?
Answer that.
I'll through you, Madam Chair, I'll have an initial go at answering that, but Leonie, Steve may wish to add more. I suppose if we look back at what's happened over the last few years, there's certainly been a reasonably dramatic change in the world climate in terms of the external factors like inflation and interest rates hitting council, if not New Zealand. Certainly that has calmed down in more recent times. But I suppose those external factors are not just limited to things like inflation and interest rates. There's also the government of the day that also impacts quite dramatically on what council are actually able to achieve. So once you sort of take all of those external factors into account and then have your own internal pressures, it becomes very difficult to manage. So I suppose if I looked at what was happening in this current financial year, we've indicated back in September that we were expecting to be in a deficit position, which essentially will eventuate. And we've taken steps to mitigate that, and not just in terms of this financial year end's position, but as well looking at the 2025-26 annual plan and the following year. So for the first time, we actually went out a year further than we would normally do in a non-LTP year. So that has involved a huge amount of work, which members of full council will sort of appreciate that's sort of been happening since September last year. And we've almost got over and got an annual plan adopted in terms of 25-26. It's happening later this month. But the work involved, both in terms of council staff and indeed the elected representatives, was huge and resulted in any number of decisions that were really hard to ensure that we were in as good a position as we could be. It's fair to say some of those decisions that we've taken to get to the rate increase we're anticipating, which is 8.9%, will place pressure on the business, and that pressure has been there since September last year and will basically continue, and probably, if anything, should have been part of our makeup previously, but we sort of lived in a land of milk and honey a little bit in terms of interest rates and things like that, that sort of gave us a pass. Forestry especially was a big saviour for council in the past. So I suppose the world's changed, and as a result we've changed. What we're actually attempting to do, we're not attempting to do, but will be doing, is making much more of a focus on the financial management, the financial maturity of the organisation. So things like bringing in monthly reforecasts, ensuring that the discussions around the financials are happening. We've been sending reports out for the 11 years I've been here, but I suppose they need to be picked up and looked at. And when we realise that things are not going as we planned, we need to have the ability to pivot and change things so that we still remain within the budgets, etc., that we've set. By doing ABC, if we have to do that, then it might be X, Y, and Z has to be pulled back to allow us to stay there. So that's my 2 cents, Leonie.
I think to the chair, to answer your question, I think that's a long explanation to someone in the street. So I think what I would say to help you is saying that actually we don't want to borrow for the groceries, and that we actually need to live within what we've got allowance in our kind of our household, like every other household's doing. And sometimes you have to take on a little bit of debt to get over a hump, but actually it's a lot of long-term strategy. So we're seriously looking at trying to live within the budget we've got, which sometimes means reducing certain things or lowering perhaps slightly what we might have done in the past, less aspirational stuff. So,
Thank you.
That help?
Madam Chair. So thank you both for your responses. So firstly, Matt, and maybe Leonie at the same time, do you think there's need for more oversight by this committee, elected members, or it's not at that stage where we need more reporting to Audit and RIS to elected members just to give us confidence that we're on the right trajectory?
To the chair, I will answer that one. Look, I think more eyes on it, the better. I think that it's good to have elected members interested in challenging us, because sometimes, it sometimes holds our feet to the fire, and I think that's really important. Governance plays a huge role in making sure that we stay on track. And also feedback on our reporting. Are you getting the information that you need by this committee or by full council? And I would assure you that there's an awful lot going in play in the background in response to what's happening. And I have confidence that we can do it. And part of what we've been doing too is to, we need to increase the commercial and financial acumen of everyone involved, governance, staff, because we can't just continue blindly into the future. And I take up Matt's point. We have been living in an environment which has been pretty benign, but we're not in that environment now. And government regulation is costing us money.
Well and true.
$500,000 for tomato ROI. They come out of the blue. We've suddenly now got to find another 400,000 for KiwiSaver next year. It's just come through. It's very hard to budget for those when we're running very tight fiscal envelopes. So, we just got to be astute and be good purchasers as well.
Certainly. Thank you. I appreciate the answers. I just do have one more on a different topic, merging risks on page 12 and 13, just in around pre-election instability and political change. And I'm certainly aware of pre-election instability once election members and candidates go into election mode. Focus tends to be on other things rather than the core business of council. And I think you've got the first one, key drivers of that elected members turnover. And I'm concerned that there may be more than usual turnover of elected members, particularly at the higher level. So I think that's something that will need to be managed carefully, because normally we get 2 or 3, but we may well get 4 or 5, or who knows. But as I say,
every election we don't know what we're going to get, and I think that I can't have much influence over that other than trying to make it an engaging council and one people want to be part of. But we are very conscious of the fact we may have quite a few new elected members, and we're doing a lot of work in the background around the induction program. So you'll see we had an improved one last time. It's going to be even better this time. And we're getting some external people to come in and really laying some really good groundwork so the community council is well positioned, understanding process, understanding what they have to have their eyes over, and understanding kind of what our challenges are, and that we all need to be working together. So yes, we're very conscious, but I think you'll be quite pleased with the new induction program. But
right. I won't be here for that.
But you won't be part of that.
But I've already had.
You can always be an observer.
I've already had potential candidates asking me about that. And I think the other thing you've noted is the caretaker period, because it's a grey area from when the poll closes to the new candidates and new council sworn in. But we normally cover that off at the last meeting. So just a reminder for that as well. Last meeting of the full council anyway. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all.
Okay. Mr. McGlynn, your hands up.
Sorry about the delay. It said that Alt A worked, but it didn't seem to work. Firstly, an apology for not being there in person. I'm unfortunately fighting a chest infection, so it's not good form these days to come to a meeting and cough over everyone. And besides, I don't think an airplane flight would have helped me. On the topics there of visibility on the finances, I can confirm that both the acting chair and myself had discussions with both the ELT and the CEO this morning on this topic about how can we improve the visibility through to this committee, not wanting this committee to redo work that's being done elsewhere, but this committee needs assurance that the steps and mitigations that are in place to address the risk that's been identified are happening, and we act as a bit of a canary in the coal mine, really. After discussing and understanding the various steps being done this morning with the SLT, I'm confident that they're on the right track to manage this, but next year's annual plan budget's going to be very, very tight. And as our CE alluded to, we are getting extra costs thrown at us, which we've got no control over. So that it will be tight, it will be difficult, and we really need to work as a team to deliver what we can to our community and what we say we're going to do within a budget. And that's going to need a lot of work. My original point I was going to raise was a point of clarification from staff that you've got an internal audit workflow planned out over the next 12 months, and whether you've got a risk assessment for fraud across the various corners of the organisation and plans so that we can make sure that the control structures and things in those higher risk areas and internal audit focus is going into the right areas, so that it's not one size fits all, because there are parts of the organisation which have a very low risk for fraud from my experience at other councils, and there's other areas that are higher in the risk, and that risk is enhanced when you have system changes and various other things going on. So it's my understanding that we do have it somewhere in the program, but I was just wondering if staff could confirm that.
Through the chair, in the draft internal audit plan, I have a fraud control identification review, which is just a starting point, which will look at identifying which controls we have in place for some of our high risk areas as a starting point, and then that might identify some other areas where we need to look at more controls. But again, that's in the draft plan, which needs to be confirmed.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. McGlynn? Was that it? That was it? Great, thanks, Amy. A couple of things from me. This report does keep getting better and better, which is wonderful. I did very much like the almost risk map that you've done, where you've aligned our strategic risks, to the priorities, which is really good practice of what good strategic risk management looks like. So that's really good. And thank you for talking through that with us. It almost follows on from Mr. McGlynn's comment about the internal audit program. So the next step, I guess, is taking this risk. You've got completeness over what those strategic risks look like. Another map might be when you align your internal audit program. So when you have that internal audit program, what does that look like when we look at this map that you've got? Because then what that does, it gives us assurance that we are identifying the right risks at the right time in relation to our priorities, but then it also, and our resource and our budgets are always going to be very skinny. So we want to make sure if we have capacity to deliver internal audit, whether that's in-house or outsourced, that we're definitely looking at the right things at the right time. So just that next step, kind of, which I'm sure you're all over. Secondly, I just, in relation to the emerging risks, just encourage, it's great for us to always be thinking about what are those emerging risks, not risks that we're faced with right today, ever present, but, they're a little bit down the road. But it's also kind of extending the scope of that corridor around almost horizon scanning. So it might not be risks that are purely related to our priorities, but nonetheless, they are still big risks that could impact us. So that's by looking at, good practice. The World Economic Forum puts out an annual global risk survey. I think some of the insurers do it as well. So just looking at those reports on an annual basis, it might be a little, and not you as Amy's island of one, it's you and ELT, or making some time in the year to go, yes, we've got our strategic risks, we've got our emerging risks, but when we look at that horizon scanning, what risks that are happening globally or in New Zealand could actually also impact us. It might have nothing to do with our priorities, but actually, wham bam, they could impact us, right? So again, just a little extension of scope. The heat map, and in relation to, I always get, as a audit risk committee chair, audit risk committee member, none of us like seeing red risks in that top right hand corner of the heat map. And when they are there, then we don't really want them to be there for that long. I want a true, I want a transparent, representation of where the risk is, and if that's where it is, then that's where it needs to be. But I like your additional, I guess, oversight and commentary in relation to how many quarters have those risks been sitting there. So I guess for those risks that are sitting in our top right hand corner, so kind of almost certain and major, or almost certain extreme, we're probably maybe for the next meeting, if maybe you have to think about how many quarters we need to, I mean, the two risks that are there are financial, which we're almost doing a deep dive conversation about today. The other one is obviously around, disasters and other major incidents. And I think previous times I've always had with that one, it's not so much about the event or the occurrence of the event, isn't it? Because we're geographically we're located in Nelson, we're probably going to have a 100 touch wood, but a 100-year event every year, it seems. So maybe it's always going to be there. So maybe it's the reframing of the risk going that we're not prepared. We do not have the ability to respond, or we're not prepared, because then hopefully, with the right resources, I know it's resource and it's time and it's money, but hopefully over time with more maturity, if it's about preparedness, then hopefully we can get that risk back to an acceptable level. But I think that was it from me on the, But yeah, great. As I say, each quarter we keep getting more and more useful information. There's not just more information going in here. You've obviously put a lot of time and effort in thinking about what would be useful information for this committee. So, well done. Nothing more from me. Can I have sorry, I need to read the resolution on the screen. I'm going to make that age where I need different things. Recommendation that the Audit and Risk Committee receives the risk and assurance report. Mackenzie. Yeah, thank you.
Aye.
And against? Carried. It's you too.
So I don't know if Ian was introduced at the last meeting, but he is now our team leader of health and safety. So I'm just introducing him and going to let him present the report. Thank you.
Afternoon. So you find the report attached. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Actually,
Sorry.
Talking through your report would be a good start. Just
Sorry, out of my natural environment here. So we've compiled a bit more of a detailed quarterly health and safety report, because a lot of work that we've been doing is getting into the trenches, assessing what systems we have, how are they working, areas that need our attention, critical risk areas, and I suppose really finding where we're lacking in resourcing and where we've also got resources that we can push out further. We've moved from just reporting stats about incidents or trends that are coming to more of a commentary about what is the risk behind the trends and the stats that we're seeing. So rather than specific incidents, public interactions, we call them harmful interactions, has been one of the topics in the report that's been affecting everybody from our public-facing regulatory services, customer service, and as we're elected members too. So that is a area that our team is actively working on for proactive controls. And one of the issues we have with it is that unlike most of our other health and safety risks where we control the environment and we control the work, we're reacting to a risk that we are aware has quite a high probability of occurring, but we're very limited on our actual controls of the person which creates the harm. So working quite closely with our wellbeing team around supporting the workers as it happens. So while individual event might not be much, some of our customer facing workers are getting worn down by continued sort of abuse and aggression. So that is something that we're going to be really monitoring, and you'll see further reporting on that in our future reports.
Thanks for your report. Just on that last, I've got a couple of things, but that last issue about customer facing staff, would you be, do you see your role as recommending structural change? For example, if the whole structure of staffing for customer facing staff would need to be changed in order to mitigate this increasing pressure, do you see that you can, or do you feel you've got an avenue to actually suggest that there needs to be some structural change? For example, that people have a limited time at which they're in a customer facing work time, that it's limited so that they're not just there for, you know, the whole shift, but there's actually a set time, but like a truck driver, you know.
No, absolutely. So what we're currently working on at the moment is a call it a tap out, tag out system for if somebody is feeling pressured. So looking at our avenue, I suppose we're going to come up with a better policy and guideline around it. But initial kind of triage reaction, I suppose, if we call it, is having a tag out process for anybody who is feeling that pressure, but also the rostered through of limited hours on customer facing roles, and then going back to the behind the house one. So that mixture where you still may receive it through manning the phones, but it's not so in your face, and some people react better to one avenue or the other. So really, we are actively stepping into that space to find out what's going to work. And of course, being everybody's tolerance is different, and everybody's comes to work with a different frame of mind each day, and depending on home life and everything else. So just trying to find a way for that team to really work together to flag up each other's, I suppose, well-being, or where they are on that day and what do they need. So definitely.
Thank you for that. And just leading on from that, you know, we know that when people are stressed because of, aggressive behaviour towards them, then they can actually behave in a bullying or aggressive way to people who are actually unrelated to the event. So that's just leads into my question about do we have a education program for what you would call horizontal bullying or workplace bullying, where people may not be aware that they are actually behaving in a bullying way towards their workmates, but they are stressed because of this, increasing stress that we have in our workplace due to pressures from outside. So I just don't see any mention. I mean, it may be there, but I just didn't see any mention of educating our staff so that they get some insight into possibly their own tendencies to have bullying behaviour of all sorts, which can be very minor things, or towards other staff members.
That's a really valid point. So our good girls training is focusing on, I suppose, their behaviour, reactive behaviour to the person that they're de-escalating, but yes, not focusing on how the debrief or how that may happen. So part of our conversation with the wellbeing team last week focused on that wraparound support and inserting in. So they had some different strategies that would go through, but I'll have to look at our bullying and harassment policy and see if it does highlight that risk. It's very valid, and certainly look at a strategy for what we can do. And I think you hit the nail on the head that it's kind of managing that support and risk from every direction. And it's, really key point. Thank you.
I wonder if I might add through you, Madam Chair. with respect to structural change, anything that we understand from a health and safety perspective, or the statistics or the incidents that we have, would inform a consideration of how our structure might need to alter, and it would be one of many things. We've got a role to play in the community if we think, for example, in terms of regulatory responses, and we can't move away from that responsibility. So we would mitigate through the actions that Ian described, in terms of training our staff and giving our staff the tools and ability to respond in those situations. If there were a number of repeated incidents that were unacceptable to council, then that would be a broader conversation about how we might look at structural mechanisms and other things to help mitigate that. And secondly, in terms of the horizontal bullying to which you referred, there's a couple of things which we have kicked off recently at about the time of the last audit and risk meeting around establishing wellbeing ambassadors, and also moving towards the wellbeing tick. And those things are part and parcel of a greater focus on the wellbeing part of our people and wellbeing function, and we're still developing it, but it would develop to encompass the sorts of things that you've been talking about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and just thanks for the report. So just two things. Firstly, to follow on from Cal, the other thing I do wonder about, if we should subtly try and educate our customers in some way. A lot of businesses now do have signage up saying, please be courteous and respect our staff, or something along those wordings. It's just a subtle reminder to people that that our staff are humans, need to be treated with respect. So whether that's been given any consideration, particularly when we have a high number of customers coming and going with varying abilities and reasons to engage with council. So something you may consider. And then just secondly, just like to congratulate you on the site visit out. We've taken Leonie out to Hope to see the contractor working there. I have to say, I've been watching their contract, and they do have a very high level of safety. They always have gates, cones for Africa, heaps of staff, and seems to be taking forever, but by and large, they're doing a really good job of protecting the public at large. So well done.
No, thank you. We have been looking at giving comms back out. So we've seen, been working with the comms division around some of the responses to the online Facebook comms have been going through, a bit more proactive with it, and then looking at options of direct comms back with anybody who is repeatedly aggressive to one of our people, and certainly some signage and some public-facing reminders of behaviour expectations would be very helpful. And unfortunately, I didn't go out Leonie to the Hope one, but we've plenty of site visits ourselves, and I'd encourage anybody, if they want to come out on a site visit, to our contractors, internal teams. They're really, really welcoming, very proud of the work we do. And my expectation would be that no bells or whistles are put on for any of your visits, because they should be performing at this highest level anyway. Really encourage it. Thank you.
Thank you through the chair. I'm just curious, do we know if we've had any instances of people ringing the road cone hotline and registering any of our sites as excessive use of cones?
So I haven't been made aware of any direct phone calls so far, but something that's quite interesting in our area in my past experience was of NZTA, so highway works and a lot of the TTM side. So our primary contractor Downers has been trialling the risk-based approach to TTM, which includes not so much limiting the furniture on the roadwork size, because you do need your certain level of protection, but innovations such as during the sealing season, using pace cars instead of 10 million cones up a centre line. Our roadworks out at Hope, while initially could appear to be a lot of TTM furniture there, it is actually quite minimal for that length of site, and they've deliberately planned to work in section by section to try and limit it. And so I think we may end up with people ringing the hotline with their perception of it, but I think behind all our contractors in this area are quite smart with their TTM, and our in-house TTM Inspectors are right up there with working on the risk-based approach. So we've worked with the team quite closely with some of our other contractors where we've had concerns about finding innovative ways to stay within the rules and regulations that we have to, but also get fit for purpose controls that are less disruptive but still offering a high level of protection.
No, thanks for that. I didn't realise we called them furniture. That must be why people steal them and take them into their houses.
Mr. McGlynn.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Firstly, Ian, welcome on board. It's always good to see new faces, and that creates an opportunity for your, before you get too much part of the furniture, if I use that term again, observations on things we could do better. And it'd be really good to hear in future reports any observations coming through after they've been appropriately workshopped through your team and SLT, etc. through there. I too was delighted to see that our CE had been out on a visit, and I'm wondering with elected members, because although the responsibility of OSH does sit with our CE, all of the elected members and have a responsibility in this area, and it'd be really good to see them getting out there, seeing these observations, but also some training on, even if it's a wee card, just on questions to ask. What are good questions when an elected member's out there to ask of people on site, and even at worker level, etc., as opposed to the bosses that might be sort of filtering stuff. What should we be doing? And maybe, yeah, a wee card or something. I don't know that our chair has mentioned that from her experiences in this area.
Yeah, I might just jump on and add to that, and then you can wrap up the two korero together. So quite a softly approach, going delighted to see that the CEO has been on a site visit. I'll probably be the hard stick and go, I'm mortified to see that. We're actually delighted that the CEO's been on a site visit, because what about, that's not a good news story, right? So where is the rest of ELT? Where is full council? Where is the audit and risk committee? Because what good looks like is that every audit and risk committee should have a health and safety site visit KPI. And that might be 4 a year. And then ELT might be 6 or 7 a year, and we'll take your guidance, because I'm sure you'll have an understanding of what good looks like. And that does not mean, as audit and risk committees, that we all go out on a bus and we sit on the bus and we don't get off because it's too cold. That might be what day one looks like, but hopefully after a year we're actually out on site, we're engaging with the workers, we're confidently knowing what questions to ask. Because although there's a liability conversation, we are still all officers of this council, so we still have an obligation under the Act to be doing everything in our power to kind of oversee the risk of health and safety, and it does sit with this committee. So I strongly encourage that, when we enter the new year, and as Graham alluded to, great opportunity, new person in the role, is that, you tell us what we need to be doing, and I'm sure Graham will play the part as chair as kind of, and I can tell you from a couple of other councils that I'm on, is that it's probably 4 a year for governors, and ELT, depending on role, it might be 6 or 7 a year. And if you can't make the time that's scheduled, then you work through Ian's role, and as he said, he's very accommodating to do it one-on-one. You might say, I can't make it with the rest of the councillors, but actually, is there any way I could go next week? Which is even better, because then you get one-on-one interaction, right? But you have a KPI, and to be on this committee, you need to meet it. So that's the harder approach to the softly approach button. Give me a view on that.
No, through the chair. I agree, actually. And previous council I've been on, there were regular visits, and I'll just talk about my Hope experience. You look at all these cones, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, there's a lot of cones, and and of course there's always been the rhetoric, there's too many of them. But when you looked at that site, it was so complex. There was a road that was closed, there was a preschool around the corner, there was a dairy. They were trying to keep the business alive, so they could provide parking. But one thing I did observe was the speed of trucks going through that area. It was down the state highway, and they weren't going 30. In fact, it was quite frightening how that all you got is a plastic cone between you and trucks going 40, 50k through a complex, very complex site. So yeah, I took away I guess a new understanding and appreciation of what they're up against. So, and trying to work in very narrow corridors, etc., with big machinery. And yeah, I think it's worthwhile for all of us to go to different sites, not just roadwork sites, out with perhaps animal control inspector, looking at the challenges that they may well have, etc. So yeah, I encourage it, and we're just coming up to a new setting over performance goals for the year, so watch out. The leadership team, you'll probably all have in there KPIs around visits, but I can't do that for the councillors though. Thank you.
Did you want to make any comments from your previous experience of setting KPIs for leadership teams and board members, or have you seen that in your experience where you've taken governors out on site visits?
Yeah, absolutely. So the numbers would be up to yourselves to set, but definitely setting KPIs. And in this instance, we've done a bit of a disservice to Steve. He undertook a site visit long after the reporting quarter, so it's great to see another one out. It is it does drive the behaviour down the whole way. So if our senior leaders are out there visible, meeting their numbers, KPIs for site visits, we can then have the pressure on our middle managers and to our team leaders to really meet some KPIs. We were talking about driving good behaviour. So we have definitely have pockets of excellence. We have pockets where we do need some momentum. And in my experience through taking the likes of Nicole Rosie and the board out to roadwork sites, different civil sites, even internal office-based activities where customer services, spending a couple of hours on some front desks, just really made a difference where a conversation from up top can really open the floodgates for momentum. Other areas is, the questions don't have to be a technical genius. Most of our workers love just a question of, what are you doing here? What do you see as your critical risks? So every site visit I've been out on, it's been led with somebody asking me what I think the critical risks are, and I've just said, you tell me what are your critical risks. And going off the fly, 3 or 4 of them have come back with complacency. Members of our team aren't that worried about certain bits. So while we'd identified our critical physical risks, we have a behavioural risk coming out through nothing more than a conversation about what is your work. So I think a big part of the prep that I've done in the past is just a bit of a brief around what is the site or the location that the senior leaders will be going to. What would you expect there, so you're not going in cold? A little bit of history of how the job or the work is progressing, and then really your questions are based off just natural skills that you all have in these positions, is getting the people on site just to talk to you. So how's your day going? What are your critical risks? What's the hold up for the job? And a bit of digging back, so yet again driving that better pressure of talking to the leaders on site around what is their reporting. Can we see your incident logs? How are you reporting through to us? So with our external looking contractors, you'll see in the next quarterly report, I'm speaking a bit ahead of time, but you will see some incidents coming in from our contractors. So we're going to have to do a bit of work on separating out what is our own risk compared to great comms from our work sites around what's happening out there, and we follow through that they're doing the investigation, and then is there anything from our end? So really simple questions, but the presence is golden, and having a KPI that we can report on and measure against and drive those behaviours is golden. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Archie.
And I'd just like to add to that the ELT has signed up to doing good drills training as a leadership function. And we are committed to making the site visits that we've spoken about earlier, like say, not necessarily something that we want to celebrate that we've started doing them, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that we have started doing them. And to that end, I'd certainly like to congratulate Ian, Kelly and Reese and Amy, because they have raised the visibility and awareness of health and safety inside our organisation significantly in what is a very short space of time. This group too has increased our focus, and I know from talking to Amy about the production of the reports for health and safety that we are in quite a different space when we consider the issues that face our business and our community, and I think you'll see that grow and develop just as you've seen the risk report grow and develop.
Sorry, Graham, did you have any other questions, or was that your only question? Is that double hands up? I just had so I had three things. So I covered off the I guess officer obligations. So that's great that you're all over that. And I think, you know, in summary to that corridor, it's visual felt leadership, I think, isn't it? It's kind of being leaders are being seen to do it, and are doing it for to enhance the health and safety culture of an organisation. So critical risks and contractors, both. So the critical risks is kind of, the critical risk is almost aligned to the officer conversation I was thinking about, is that I've worked with other organisations, local government organisations that have actually also invited their councillors along to critical risk workshops. So maybe something to think about going forward. So when you think about what good practice looks like, you know, and go for gold, put up in your plan what you want officers, i.e. councillors, audit and risk committee members and ELT, what you think good practice looks like. You may get knocked back, they might be kicking and screaming, but kind of just paint a picture of what good looks like. Because what I've seen also, it's not just about site visits. It's not just going doing a site visit and go, okay, tick, I've done health and safety for the year. The other thing is you can, I know we're all time poor, but when you do a deep dive on those critical risks, as an audit and risk committee chair of another local government, I've been invited to, and I can't attend all of them, but you know, where I can, I'll attend there's only 5 critical risks. So when you do a deep dive, send an invite out to councillors. You know, they might come, they might not come, but at least it shows we're trying to. And then finally, contractors. So great to hear that that's still work in progress. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to get good reporting out of our contractors. So again, using your previous experience, I'll be keen to understand next time what you think, if you know what you think good looks like. So how we can encourage and work with our contractors just to get better reporting by building those relationships. Again, I work with other organisations that have multi-contractor, you know, if they like each other, if you can get them all in a room, but, you know, multi-contractor health and safety forums where you can, you know, you can be the host, doesn't have to cost any money, but you can get them in a room to talk about critical risks or talk about challenges, or just how we can work with our contractors to make sure that, because, you know, inherently that's where a lot of the, as you know, that's where a lot of our health and safety risk, isn't it? So, but yeah, kind of put it on the work in progress kind of part. But that was all from me for the health and safety report. There's no other questions. Happy to move. Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Butler, thank you. Seconder, all those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Carried. Resolution to, actually, so they need to receive.
That's what,
I've done that before the start. So I told you to stuff it up. Okay, now I'm going to make a resolution to move into public excluded. If someone.
Written down on me.
I have to read before we go.
Summarize it. The key.
It's on screen. Okay, maybe we make reference to the screen. I know also that the reason for the items within the public excluded part have been documented on page. It's page 12. Page 35. Yeah. So therefore, thank you. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Butler. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
against? Carried.